Hello and welcome to another video in my Of Mice and Men revision series. Today we're going to be looking at how can you get a grade 9 in your Of Mice and Men exam, and this is aimed at those of you taking IGCSE English Lit with Edexcel Pearson. Let's get straight into the mark scheme before we do anything else. So for the Of Mice and Men question, which is modern prose, you are assessed on two assessment objectives. So AO1, demonstrate a close knowledge and understanding of text, maintaining a critical style, presenting an informed personal engagement, 20 marks. And AO4, which is show understanding of the relationship between texts and the context in which they were written. Okay, so unlike other parts of your English Lit, you're not going to have to analyse language in as much depth as normal. That's not the aim. It's looking at how do you critically answer the question. We're going to look at a bit more what that means. But I've cropped the mark scheme here so you can just see the very, very top. I've taken out all the lower marks. It's out of 40, so you get 20 marks for each assessment objective. So if we look down the bottom at level 5, so for our top answers, 33 to 40, assured knowledge and understanding of the text. So that means you're able to draw from loads of different examples, or not necessarily lots of different examples, but you're able to draw from examples and in detail, and your answer shows that you know the text very, very well. So there's no quick fix there, guys. For that, to have assured knowledge, you need to know the text well. Now, the great thing about Of Mice and Men is that compared to quite a lot of other GCSE texts, it's actually quite short. So if you can, I would recommend reading it at least twice for your revision, just to make sure you know it really well. Another great thing, though, is that the film Of Mice and Men is mostly loyal to the book. Okay, so actually watching the film, if that's a slightly more relaxing way to revise, that's also advised. But at the end of the day, the book is where it's at. If we look at the second bullet point, the response shows assured personal engagement and a perceptive critical style. For me, the important word here is perceptive. So if they're asking you a question about authority, you're not necessarily giving the most obvious answer. You're showing that you've thought about the concept of authority from lots of different angles, and that you're not just following the crowd and saying the first thing you think of. You're actually really taking a step back and looking at it from all angles. We're going to take an example of that. Understanding of the relationship between text and context is integrated convincingly into the response. So that means that actually with everything, when you're answering the question, you're always thinking about what is John Steinbeck trying to say about society, and you understand throughout the essay you link each individual point you make to the overall understanding of context. And discriminating use of relevant examples in support. So I think the word discriminating there is basically saying, you're not just throwing in example after example, you're not just listing, then Lenny did this, then George did this, and then Curly's wife did this. You're picking really, really good examples, and you're just picking the absolute best ones and explaining them really, really, really well. So when we talk about informed personal engagement and critical thinking, this is the wording in AO1, which is 50% of the marks. This is looking at your ability to make clear and sophisticated arguments and points about the text. The examiner needs to see that you've thought about an issue from multiple perspectives. And that is going to be the difference between a level 7 or 6 and a level 8 and 9, or a grade 8 and 9. Okay, it's going to be those people that have the more sophisticated arguments. And that means that it's literally how you word things, and it's showing that you've thought about things from multiple angles. So as I say in every video, and I'm obviously going to say in this video, with every single thing we do with Of Mice and Men, we must link it back to this question. What is John Steinbeck trying to say about society in 1930s America? So if the question is about crooks, what's he trying to say about racism in 1930s America? If the question is about loneliness, what could John Steinbeck be trying to say maybe about the amount of migrants in America, or migrant workers in 1930s America? Or if it's about loneliness, what's perhaps he's saying about women being pushed back into the home, using Curly's wife. And as you can see, we've got loads of different examples here of what your question could be on. You'll get a choice of two. You could get a question on how animals are presented. You could have George, Lenny, dreams, power, crooks, companionship, candy, Curly's wife, disappointment, Curly, loneliness, Slim, and many more. You need to make sure whichever question you pick, you have got a point of view and you've got something to say. And we're going to look at an example coming up. So when you've picked your question, Then mind map all the separate points that you could make to link to the question. Then take a metaphorical step back and think overall, what was John Steinbeck trying to say? So, for example, if the question was on how the idea of companionship is represented, the overall idea might be that Steinbeck presents the themes of companionship and loneliness in Of Mice and Men to illustrate how the economic situation of the Great Depression was isolating many vulnerable people in society. And then you would take individual points to kind of prove that from within the text, but your overall, it's kind of the big picture. What's John Steinbeck saying about society? So then for your structure, first of all, you need a killer introduction. Because 50% of the marks here are for critical thinking and informed personal engagement, you can show both these things immediately in your introduction. And obviously it's so important, guys, like the examiners will be marking hundreds of exams. If you can, in an introduction, already wow them, they're going to sit up straight and go, okay, right, I need to really make sure I've got my best pen in my hand because this is someone I need to watch out. So I cannot emphasize enough how important that intro is. So clear and concise introduction that expresses an overall point. So for example, if the question is, how does John Steinbeck present companionship? You might say, Steinbeck presents the themes of companionship and loneliness in Of Mice and Men to illustrate how the economic situation of the Great Depression was isolating many vulnerable people in society. Now, if I was the examiner, I'd be thinking, wow, first of all, they have made a big point. They've not already started talking about specific characters. They're making an overall point. And also, tick, 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 they have linked already to context. They've already talked about the Great Depression in their first sentence. So already the examiner's going to be thinking, okay, this is someone that I'm going to be probably looking at the kind of top levels for this answer. Okay, so once you've done your amazing introduction, you need to move on to the main body of your essay and your argument. So every year I have students come up to me and ask, Miss, how many exact paragraphs do I need to write to get a grade 7, a grade 8, a grade 9? There's no perfect answer, okay, because it's about your overall argument. It's about your overall writing style and how critical you are and how clear you are. So there isn't a right answer to that. But I would say for most people, you really should aim for at least 3. If you have fewer than that, possibly you haven't been able to kind of explore the issue from as many angles as you need to make your point clearly. If that's a struggle for you now, then timing is something you need to work on. Okay, and one way to practice that would be take some of the examples from the previous paragraph, from the previous slide here, and try mind mapping perhaps some of your ideas for each one, so that in the exam you've already got lots of ideas prepared when you start the question. So for example, paragraph 1, if I was going to write about Candy and his dog, my point would be how Candy is isolated because of his age, and his dog, the fact his dog is killed because it's not valuable anymore to society because it's old, emphasises how Candy is isolated and has no companionship because of the way that society values people for what they contribute because of capitalism. So that would be my kind of point for paragraph 1. Paragraph 2, I might talk about Curly's wife is obviously symbolises isolation because she's the only woman on the ranch. So I would link that maybe to context, talking about how because of the Great Depression, women are being pushed back into the home, and Curly's wife emphasises that isolation there. And then paragraph 3, I would talk about George and Lenny. Perhaps I'd link it to the context of migrant workers moving around all the time, but George and Lenny are different. I would, look, there's some good quotes I could use there when George and Lenny are talking about their dream. However, because at the end of the text, Lenny is killed by George, that's perhaps symbolic of Steinbeck saying that, these ranch hands are doomed to be alone because even George and Lenny's companionship can't keep going. So then for your conclusion, you want to make sure that you're again mentioning those keywords that were in the question. So for this question, it's companionship. And you recap your original point from the introduction, which if you've written a good introduction, you could write your conclusion in 30 seconds and still get a grade 9 for this question. Every video I make, I always come back to this for Of Mice and Men. What is John Steinbeck trying to say about society in 1930s America? So I really would encourage you, as I said, to go back, pause the video and have a think for all those different topics. What is John Steinbeck trying to say about society in 1930s America? You need to be able to articulate your point of view clearly. You need to be able to link all your mini points to your overall main point, and you must be able to link to context. Now, one thing I'm going to do in this video is, in the description down below, I'm going to link some resources that will help you to revise context. So if you feel that you're not that confident on context, have a look at the resources below. As always, any questions you've got, please post them below, or any comments that you have, and I'll make sure I address them in future videos.